Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into my next team preview video. Today I will be doing the Indianapolis Colts as I work my way through the playoff teams from last year and wrap up this video series over this next week or so. And if this is your first video of mine that you are watching, what you can expect is right after I get done with this, I'm going to go right into my feelings on head coach Frank Reich. But take a look at the team's remaining cap space and see if they have anything to work with, and take a look at notable players entering a contract year that have been on the team for the past couple seasons, and then take a look at their offense, take a look at their defense, give you my overall feelings on this team as a whole, and then I do give you a little bit of a fantasy football perspective, mostly on the offensive side of the ball, of course. Whenever I go over that, just in case you guys are interested in my feelings, if there's players I'm trying to draft, if there's players I am trying to avoid. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into this. Frank Reich, he's been one of the top coaches in the league ever since he joined the Colts. You know, the first year him and Luck really connected, and they went on that little playoff run. And then, of course, Luck does indeed retire, so that's something you don't ever want to really deal with. And then he kept the team afloat during that year with Jacoby Brissett and went 7-9 and missed the playoffs. And then obviously they bring in Philip Rivers the last year, and Philip Rivers he uses a Philip Rivers that was supposedly washed in everybody's opinion, gets him back to being Philip Rivers, and they make the playoffs. They lose the first weekend, but I think that's promising that, you know, Coach Wright can take any type of quarterback and win games with them. Which is something they may need this year, as we all know, with Carson Wentz already dealing with an injury before things even got started. For me, Coach Reich, he just got his contract extension, so he's at least here for another few seasons. I don't see why they would not want to keep him around. He's always kept this team afloat, no matter how many injuries are affecting his roster. So I think highly of him as a coach, and we'll see if he can finally win that division, because that's the thing the Colts are searching for. Trust me, I know as a fan, they have not won the division since 2014. So that's the number one goal for Frank Reich. That's the next step in his coaching career that he needs to take. He needs to lead this team to a division title sooner than later. Obviously, like I said, he's got some time to work with since he did just get that contract extension last week. But let's go ahead and keep it moving. This is a little bit surprising because about a month and a half ago, everybody's like, why aren't the Colts spending all this cap space they have? Well, it was because they had to work out contract extensions with Braden Smith and Darius Leonard. They got both those contracts done. So now the Colts are sitting at the seventh least remaining cap space, sitting at $6.3 million. So that's a little room to work with. You know, if you wanted to maybe go acquire anybody at a low salary off the market, maybe there's somebody sitting with a low salary you can rent for the year in a trade. So if they wanted to do that, they could. Some players entering a contract year. I put T.Y. Hilton down there. Usually I just try to count players that are not on a signed a one-year deal, but T.Y.'s been here his whole career. He signed a one-year deal this past offseason, so technically he is in one. And this could be his final year in Indianapolis if he chooses to retire or move on to other teams. The one I'm watching for is Nyheim Hines. Now, you don't think he would get one just because, you know, Jonathan Taylor is the lead back. You don't want to invest too much money in the room. But Nyheim Hines has such a unique role within the offense. I think if you take him out of that, that really kind of dampers the effectiveness of the offense's ability to move the chains, especially how Frank Reich uses him in the offense. Now, I can understand why they maybe don't want to work out anything prior to the season, but that's a guy I think they could maybe work out something at the end of the season. It's a guy I think that could still be in their future plans. You just wonder, you know, if they don't want to have too much money invested in there, because eventually they're going to have to pay Quentin Nelson soon, and there could be some other guys down the line that they need to pay as well. And you don't want to have too much money invested in the running back room, but maybe they can get him a contract like the Bears did for Tariq Cohen, because he's a better back than Tariq Cohen. And I think he definitely deserves his money because of the way he can move the chains. Zach Pascal is a very solid wide receiver. Don't see anything working out for him prior to the season, but maybe in the offseason, if Ty either retires or moves on, and if Pittman Jr. or Paris Campbell don't live up to their billing, maybe they want to keep Pascal on the team going forward. Mark Lewinsky's a starting guard. I don't see that happening with Mark. There will probably, if his plays up to par, I can see them working something off at the end of the season. But they got a guy like Danny Pinter that could eventually be groomed to be that fill in that guard spot. Mo Alley Cox, don't expect that to happen until the after this season. They're kind of waiting for him to put a full like season schedule stretch of dominant performance before you try to give that type of money. Tyquan Lewis has came on strong over the last year or so, but they drafted Dale Adegbo and Cody Pay in this past draft, so I think he's going to leave no matter how great he plays this year after the season. And Zaire Franklin's finally going to give his opportunity to start next to Darius Leonard and Bobby Okereke, but they got a guy I really like in EJ Speed in the back and behind him that's competing for that starting spot. So we'll see. I don't think anything's going to happen to Franklin prior. So let's just go ahead and get this moving then, since I kind of broke those down individually. This is the offensive preview. Now, these are the projected starters from me, because I wrote the Colts section in the Prospect Encyclopedia. I had to do some tweaks. It looks like the guy that did the final edits made some tweaks to my starting roster, because a lot of these guys are going to possibly miss week 1. So they kind of listed some guys like Eric Fisher on the PUP list, and then questions around Quentin Nelson and Carson Wentz. But I made my changes. But if you do go order the Prospect Encyclopedia, you might see a different starting lineup. But yeah, let's start with the quarterback position. Carson Wentz. So obviously Carson Wentz was brought in to help replace Phillip Rivers. Carson Wentz is coming off his worst season as a pro. You got to wonder if he's going to ever get back to even somewhat resembling the 2017 self that we saw. I always point to the 2019 season from Carson Wentz. Like, was he perfect in 2019? No. But he was solid. I mean, he took the Eagles to the playoffs that year. People forget he was throwing to basically practice squad wide receivers, and he put the team on his back, literally, and pretty much broke it, and took the team to the playoffs. So, I mean, he's 2 years removed from taking a team to the playoffs. So I don't understand why everybody thinks he's kind of just completely washed out. I do believe he is coming off obviously his worst season ever. You got to hope that he can at least somewhat bounce back from that. And I think he is in the right place. I think he's in the right culture to do that. I think he's with the right coach in Frank Reich, who he worked with in that 2017 season when Frank Reich was the offensive coordinator for the he was the offensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles. So I think this is setting up for at least for Carson Wentz to have a bounce back year in his career. Now, obviously, there is that concern, right? He did hurt he had that old high school injury that popped up in his foot. He had surgery. The announcement was he could miss anywhere between 5 to 12 weeks. Obviously, that's a concern, but he was on the practice field walking around without a boot last week. We really won't know until probably sometime this week when they reevaluate. From what I understand, after 2 weeks, they should know where him and Quentin Nelson kind of have something similar going on, where those guys stand. And all signs point that he's more than likely going to be on the shorter end of the 5 to 12 week return, and he's got a good chance to start week 1. Maybe he has to miss week 1, maybe week 2, even week 3. But the expectation, in my opinion, is he'll probably be back at the latest by late September. So maybe they have to get by with a Jacob Eason or Sam Ehlinger in the first 2 to 3 weeks of the season. But here's something that's notable about Carson Wentz since 2018. Obviously, most of his stats popped up on the bad end, but some good positive things that popped up since 2018 is he's actually got the 4th most comebacks. He's got 7, and he's tied for the 4th most game-winning drives at 7. So if the team's not getting the win around him, he can put the team on his back and help lead them to victories, which is something that you got to at least like. Now, say Carson Wentz does have to miss the game. We're going to have to see if it's going to be Jacob Eason or Sam Ehlinger. Both those guys kind of bring their own unique skill sets. They're completely polar opposites of quarterbacks. So it's going to be interesting to see who wins the battle. I slightly lean towards Eason because Eason's got more of your prototypical quarterback starting traits in the league, but there's something special, something about Sam Ehlinger's moxie too that you like, especially his rushing ability to stretch out plays. So we'll have to see who wins that battle, but obviously if it's Eason or Ehlinger, the Colts are going to be a lot worse than I think if it was Carson Wentz, even if Carson Wentz is only 50% of himself. So We'll have to see how that situation plays out as the season progresses. But other than that, I think we could see a strong season from Carson Wentz as long as he's 100% fully healthy after that foot surgery. So let's keep it moving then to the running back position. We got Jonathan Taylor entering his second year. He really came on strong. He was a big part of the Colts' late season run to push in and crack into that playoff picture, and because of the way he played at the end of the year. And taking a look at Jonathan Taylor, now obviously he's only played one season, but he popped up on some stats for me when I pulled him since 2018, more the per game average stats. Before I get into the per game average stats, here's one thing, a streak he's on right now. He's currently tied for the third longest active streak with at least 50 rushing yards in a game. He's got 6 games in a row with 50 rushing yards. And then on top of that, he's got the 4th most yards per attempt. He's got the 6th most rushing yards per game. And he's got the 9th most fantasy football points per game since 2018. So he's been highly productive in his year one, and I expect that to carry over to year 2. He's got the strong offensive line in front of him. He's got the confidence of the coaches behind him, and he's got a lot of glowing reports coming out of camp that he's looking the best he's ever has since he's joined the Colts. So I'm excited. I think he's going to have a big year. In terms of fantasy, yeah, he's the guy I want because I do believe he's going to dominate the touches out of the backfield. Obviously, you do have that concern with the Nyheim Hines cutting into his receptions. Marlon Mack is back. I'm sure Marlon Mack's going to get maybe 5 to 10 touches a game. But I think at the end of the day, when everything's balanced throughout the whole 17 games, I think Taylor's going to finish as an RB1. In fantasy. So he's somebody I'm definitely high on and trying to get on my team. Before I talk about the other backs, in terms of Carson Wentz, no, I'm not trying to draft Carson Wentz. As much as a Colts fan as I am, I don't see him being fantasy relevant to start the season, especially because of the injury. Nobody's going to draft him anyway because of the injury and how he played. But keep in mind, watch and see how he performs, because if he comes out balling for the Colts, you may want to go scoop him up, put him on your bench, see if he keeps on balling, and then if he does, maybe you got a sneaky fantasy quarterback. But I lean towards just waiting on the Wentz situation, but don't wait on Taylor. If you have an opportunity, he's definitely worth a back-end first-round draft pick, top of the second draft pick in fantasy football this year. Now, the other guy that's going to complement him, the little thunder and lightning situation the Colts got going on, is Nyheim Hines. Nyheim Hines is a very underrated running back. Not only is he a good running back with the ball in his hands, like as a rusher, but he's definitely effective as a receiver. And here's a couple things on Nyheim Hines since 2018. He's got the 5th most receptions. He's got 170. These are among running backs only, of course. And then he's also got the 5th most receiving yards at 1,227. So he has a different element than Taylor. Now, obviously, I think both of them can work off each other. I think there's a way you can use both of them on the field at the same time. Sometimes they do line up Nyheim in the slot, and they can put Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. So, yeah, he's definitely going to have a key role once again. And as far as fantasy, yeah, Hines for me he's that running back. He's that PPR running back, right? You add him to your lineup. You can draft him to your bench. If Taylor has to miss time for any reason, if an injury pops up, also Nyheim Hines is kind of in that RB2 range. But he's a guy that you have on your bench. You can play him in your flex and on any given week. If the matchup's right, if you think the Colts are going to have to play catch up against a really good potent offense, yeah, you want to play Nyheim Hines because the game script's going to play in his favor. So he's definitely worth a bench ad. You just don't want to count him on as a week in and week out player for you. And then, like I said, do watch Marlon Mack. I thought he kind of started resembling himself yesterday in that preseason game. He'll definitely get a number of touches as well. Now, taking a look at the wide receiver room, to me could be, it's very, in my opinion, you could call me biased if you want to, but I think it is pretty underrated, that wide receiver room. They bring back T.Y. Hilton. Again, he's at the back end of his career, but go watch those final games. T.Y. was playing a huge part and helping lead the team to those victories. He was picking up big chunk plays through the air and getting some touchdowns for the team. Now, T.Y. Hilton, I do expect he will have a nice little target load every week. He's not going high in drafts anymore like he used to. So with T.Y. Hilton, he's a guy that you can get on your bench And then if he does see a consistent workload, a consistent target load every week, all of a sudden you can slide him into your wide receiver 3, and all of a sudden he can give you maybe a wide receiver 1 week on any given week. He's not a guy you have to depend on anymore, but he's got the upside of being a wide receiver 1 because he is the best guy in that wide receiver room right now. And then Paris Campbell, we'll have to see if he can finally stay healthy. This is his 3rd year, so again, year 3, Paris Campbell could blow up. You know how I like my year 3 guys, but he just has to stay healthy. I think he's only got 7 games to his name. He did have a nice little 37-yard catch against the Panthers yesterday. He showed his ability to create that separation. So I think that's a name to watch this year to potentially be a sleeper fantasy play. He's not going to really go high in drafts because a lot of people forgot about him because of the injuries. So keep a name on that if you're trying, especially if you're in deep leagues, as a late round dart throw off the Colts. And then Michael Pittman Jr. He came on. He kind of had a quiet year because at the beginning of the year, he had a compartment leg syndrome, which caused him to have surgery and miss some time. But then when he came back, he really worked his way into the lineup and having a good role, working those crossers, working those end arounds. And he's a guy that can see a consistent role in this offense. So he brings a big body presence too, so he can be a red zone threat when they get closer to the end zone. So what I like about this wide receiver room for the Colts is all 3 of them kind of have a different skill set that can complement each other. T.Y. Hilton, you know, he can not only be that field stretcher that he's always been, but he's a good route runner. He can work things in the short to intermediate route range, and he's that veteran that can teach all these wide receivers the nuances of the game. Paris Campbell's got this, like, when he's on the field, he's got electric speed, so he could take a screen for 20 plus yards on any given moment. You can line him back on the field. You can give him a handoff. You can use his versatility in a variety of ways within the scheme. And then Michael Pittman Jr., like I mentioned, he's kind of got a bigger body compared to those 2. And then he's also got enough speed where, I mean, we saw it last year, I think it was against the Titans, where he caught a crosser and ran like 40 yards for a touchdown. So he's just a very solid wide receiver. I'm excited to see what they bring. And then I mentioned earlier, they still got Zach Pascal to work in the lineup if any injuries were to happen to those guys. And there's a couple young guys I like, definitely Mike Strawn. He's a guy I really am excited about. I don't know about fantasy, but just he had a decent performance yesterday, and I'm looking forward to that guy. And I think he might end up being the 7th round steal. Now that's definitely me being a Colts bias right there, but I like Mike Strawn that the Colts drafted this year. And then moving on to their tight end position, Jack Doyle, he's still there, but you know, as great as Jack has been, he's going to do his role. He's going to be a good blocker. He can catch those short to intermediate routes, but you're not going to depend on him to shake anybody or break any tackles at this point of his career. He's just going to get the job done from the position. Mo Alley Cox, he's got that big body presence. Obviously, he can go up and sky up and get some balls. And then they got the rookie Kylan Granson. That's the guy I'm kind of watching. I really like his receiving ability. He's going to fill in that Trey Burton role from last year. All 3 are going to get a good amount of snaps. So as far as like looking from a fantasy perspective at the tight ends, you know, if they didn't draft Kylan Granson, maybe I would kind of take a chance on Mo Alley Cox as a late round dart throw. But now that Kylan Granson's there, they still got Jack Doyle. I like Mo Alley Cox a lot, but I don't think any of these guys are worth your time in fantasy, because I think they'll all be a headache to own. Because I think, you know, 1 week Jack Doyle's getting those 5 to 6 receptions. Next week that's Mo Alley Cox getting those 5 to 6 receptions, and next week it's Kylan Granson's turn. So I think they're all going to get their fair share of opportunity to produce for the Colts. Now, moving on to the offensive line. Now, there is some concern right now because the offensive line is dealing with a number of injuries. Eric Fisher, they signed from the Chiefs. He's not expected to come back and start for the Colts until probably that late September to October range, early October range. So their current left tackle situation is very dire, and it could get very ugly for whoever is at the quarterback in week 1. If they don't have Fisher out there, or if the current guys that they have don't step up their play and they don't maybe go try to acquire somebody to fill in until Eric comes back, that's a situation to watch as far as their passing attack, because it was very ugly yesterday for those guys that were performing for that spot. So That's a major concern on the Colts offensive line until Eric Fisher comes back. Again, Quentin Nelson's dealing with a similar injury as Carson Wentz. He had that same time frame, but he also was not in a boot walking around in practice last week. So it sounds like he's also on the shorter end. And he said it himself. His plan is to be out there by week 1. So I'm never going to deny Quentin Nelson the freak. Big Q. So I'm totally expecting Quentin Nelson to at least be out there week 1. I don't know about Carson, but I think Quentin Nelson will be. Ryan Kelly hurt his elbow, but that was like a 1 to 2 week injury. So I think he's actually supposed to come back to practice this week. Mark Lewinsky's fine. Braden Smith was dealing with a foot injury, but I think he's coming back shortly. But obviously, you need all 5 of those guys in there to be one of the best offensive lines. As long as they all 5 can get healthy and be as a unit by mid-October, they should be one of the better offensive lines in the league. So as long as all 5 are on the field at some point this year, I think that's going to really help this offense hit on all cylinders. I think that's going to help Jonathan Taylor have a strong year, and then that by then Carson Wentz will be playing behind the best offensive line that he's had in some time in his career. So I think that's going to give him more time where he doesn't have that pressure to run around and try to play superhero ball like he was doing in Philadelphia, and then he can let things come to him. He can let T.Y. find an open hole. He can let Paris Campbell take a dump off for 20 yards, and he can work the ball to Michael Pittman Jr. and among the other guys in the passing attack. Overall, it's just like an offense it's going to come down. I think their rushing attack will be fine with Taylor, Hines, and Marlon Mack, but their passing attack, it's completely up in the air right now. Because we don't know how Carson Wentz is going to truly look until live bullets are going on, and we're going to see if he is either completely has digressed as a player or if he can bounce back and turn his career around. And if it's the positive, this offense could be potentially like a top 15 offense. If it's the opposite and he's playing bad, or if it's the opposite and he misses more time because of injuries and you're depending on Jacob Eason or Sam Ehlinger, it's more likely going to be a bottom end offense because of the inconsistencies from the quarterback position. And then let's just go ahead and keep this moving to the defense. Again, these are the projected starters for myself from the Prospect Encyclopedia. Let's work our way from the inside out on the Colts. Obviously, the Colts' biggest issue from the last few years is they have not got any consistent pressure off the edge. So they went ahead and addressed that in their first round pick with Kwity Paye. Kwity Paye is really good in my opinion. I think as long as he's ready to go week 1, I think he had like a slightly sprained foot, so he should be able to go by week 1. He's a guy where I think he can win Defensive Rookie of the Year honors because he's working next to DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart. Those guys are going to command presence in the middle of the defense. So Kwity Paye is going to see a lot of one-on-one opportunities to get those sacks. So if he can deliver on his first-round talent, I really think he can eventually win Defensive Rookie of the Year this year and pile up some sack numbers. And then Tyquan Lewis, I talked him up earlier. He's came on strong for the last year and a half for the Colts ever since he's finally getting healthy in his career. And I think he can do a solid job opposite of Kwity. But then they got a number of guys they can work in the rotation, like Kamiko Toure. If anybody knows me, as far as a Colts fan, they know I've been really high on Kamiko Toure since he's been on the Colts. He just always keeps on dealing with injuries. It seems like he's finally fully healthy, so I'm excited to see what he brings. Obviously, the Colts are hoping something out of Ben Banogo, and then we'll have to see when Odengbo is able to return from his torn Achilles. He's expected to miss at least the first half of the season as he works his way back. But with that being said, they have a number of guys they can work in this rotation and see if at least if Quity's not like the answer, at least in year 1, maybe they can at least get some consistent pressure from their whole rotation as a whole, keeping guys fresh. But the one thing you can count on is DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart being one of the top interior defensive line tandems in the league. Grover Stewart just eats up space, and he's very underrated. Not a lot of people understand how big of an impact he makes on this defense. And then he also has one of the best D tackles in the league next to him, DeForest Buckner. So taking a look at DeForest Buckner, he's since 2018, he's actually one of 7 players with at least with one season of 67 tackles, plus tackles, 13 plus tackles for a loss, 16 plus quarterback hits, and 9 plus sacks. He's also tied for the second most fumble recoveries at 6, and he's got the tied for the 7th most tackles for a loss. So he will disrupt offensive lines. He can end run plays right away, and he can collapse pockets because of his strength and speed. And then moving on to their linebacker group, I mentioned about Zaire Franklin, but the main focus is on Darius Leonard, obviously, who just got paid their best, one of their best players on the team, and then Bobby Okereke, who I think took his next step last year. And these Bobby Okereke and Darius Leonard can form a top linebacker tandem. Bobby Okereke is really solid in coverage. He can fly over the field. He's got sideline to sideline speed, and that's what you got with Darius Leonard, who's at that sideline to sideline speed as well. And he's got the playmaking ability where at any given moment you don't know if he's going to punch the ball out for a fumble. You don't know if he's going to get his hands on for an interception or fly up the field and cause a sack during a passing situation. And taking a look at Darius Leonard since 2018, now here's one stat is not just from 2018. Darius Leonard is the only player in NFL history to have 2 seasons of 105 plus tackles, 5 plus sacks, 2 plus interceptions, and 2 forced fumbles. Only player to ever have 2 seasons with that type of production. And since 2018, he's got the 4th most solo tackles at 268, and he's tied for the 5th most forced fumbles at 9. So he's an absolutely baller anytime he's out on the field. Now, the biggest concern with the Colts is probably their cornerback group. Xavier Rhodes bounced back to his career last year, so I don't have my issues with him. Kenny Moore is, in my opinion, the best nickelback in the league. Kenny Moore is actually one of 10 players with a season of 75 plus tackles with 12 plus pass deflections and 3 plus interceptions since 2018. Now, where you get your concerns in this Colts cornerback group is at the opposite side of Xavier Rhodes. Rocky Sin has just been very inconsistent. He can be sticky in coverage, but he leads to penalties, or he can get beat at times. So you just want to see some consistency out of Rocky Sin if he wins that the battle for that cornerback 3 spot. But then when they got a veteran like TJ Carey, who has been solid, but you want the younger guy to step up. And then we'll see if maybe an Isaiah Rodgers or Marvell Tell can maybe work themselves into the rotation too. But that's my biggest concern with the Colts defense is that 3rd cornerback spot. Who can be consistent out of that area? And then to me, they got a very underrated safety tandem in Julian Blackmon and Khari Willis. Khari Willis is the glue of the secondary. If he has whenever he misses time, you kind of see this secondary getting picked apart. He's a do-it-all player who gets the job done. You're never gonna really hear much about him from the media, but he's definitely a solid player on this defense. And then Julian Blackmon really impressed as a rookie. At one point people were thinking maybe defensive rookie of the year, kind of hit a wall, but he's able to play back in deep coverage and scan the field, get tackles, come up and get pass deflections, interceptions when he's back there in coverage, and he can fly up the field and get a tackle for a loss as well. I mean, overall, this defense, it has the makings of a top 10 defense. They just got to figure out how they can get the consistent edge pressure. And if they can do that, I think that can make up for maybe the lack of consistencies from that cornerback group in the CB3 spot. But overall for this Colts team, they have one of their best overall rosters that they've had in the Chris Ballard era and in the Frank Reich era. What this is going to come down to is the quarterback position. I mean, that's what most NFL teams come down to. Who is going to be Carson Wentz this year? I've already went over this once. I'll just wrap it up here again. If Carson Wentz is the Carson Wentz we saw in 2020, this is going to be a very inconsistent offense that's going to depend on that defense to bail them out, and then it means they're going to probably lose more games more times than not. Now, if this can be the Carson Wentz of even just 2019, and maybe he can be slightly better than that 2019 season. This is a team where the defense is good enough where they can create the turnovers and put the offense in a good position throughout games. And if Carson Wentz can just be efficient, not turn the ball over, and not play superhero ball, and just make sure he's just doing his job, this is a team that can work their way into like a 9-8, 10-7 range. If everything goes right, and if this defense can live up to top 10 billing, they can get to the 11-6 record and possibly win the division. Now, this is going to come down to how well they play against the Titans in those 2 matchups this season. But to me, overall, it's a borderline playoff team right now that can easily get into the playoffs if Carson Wentz significantly improves from his play last year. And it's a borderline playoff team that will be on the outside looking in if Carson Wentz plays like the 2020 version of himself or even worse than that. But yeah, that's my overall feelings on the Colts heading into the year. Thank you guys for watching this video today. I always appreciate anybody that spends time watching my content. You don't understand how much I appreciate it. So if you did enjoy it, please hit the please like this video. If you have not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe to my channel. I want to get to 100 subscribers sooner than later. My goal is by the time the season kicks off. So go tell a friend to check out my videos. Go check out my other team preview videos if you haven't got a chance to catch them all yet. And the next team I will be doing will be the Titans. I do plan on doing that at some point tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. And then stay tuned for me on probably Twitter. I'll announce it. I'm doing something for the Prospect Encyclopedia on Jake Ellenbogen's channel, I believe, tomorrow night around 8:30 or 9 p.m. Eastern. Stay tuned. I'll have some announcements. I'm sure I'll post about it as well. We're going to be speaking about that. Go follow Jake's channel on YouTube. He pumps out a lot of Rams content if you're a Rams fan. And also, too, if you are a Colts fan, I finally am getting back to firing up my Colts Wires articles. So I have a top 5 takeaways from the Colts preseason game. You can go to Colts Wire through USA Today to check out that article as well. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and wrap that up. I'll see you guys when I make that Titans video. Peace out.